I was finishing up the dinner dishes when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was already a long day. Work had been packed as usual. Tuesdays are always rough in the clinic. People cancel, people reschedule, and others show up 20 minutes late but still expect to be seen. I had just put Jaden down for the night. He wanted me to read that dinosaur book again, the one where the T-Rex learns to share. I was halfway through the dishes when the screen lit up. It was a message from my dad. Family over everything. You need to help with Dylan's graduation. I stared at it for a second, a bit thrown off. My dad doesn't usually message unless it's some chain text or a picture of his dog. Then, almost immediately, another text came through. I'm serious, Amanda. We need $2,500 for his graduation party. This isn't a request. It's expected. I just stood there holding a wet glass in my hand, trying to understand if I'd read that right. $2,500. For a party. For Dylan's high school graduation. I sat down at the kitchen table staring at my phone. There was no, how are you, or how's Jaden? No asking if I was okay or if I even could contribute anything. Just an expectation like I was some kind of ATM. It wasn't that I didn't love Dylan. He's my younger half-brother. He's 17, about to finish high school, and honestly a good kid. But we aren't particularly close. He grew up in Lincoln with our dad and his wife Sharon while I stayed in Omaha with Mom. Dad didn't really come around much when I was a kid. Birthdays and maybe Christmas if he remembered. But after Dylan was born, he suddenly turned into Father of the Year. Soccer practices, science fairs, Instagram pictures with matching shirts. I always told myself it didn't bother me. That I was used to being the forgotten kid. But I guess deep down that never really went away. I replied after a few minutes. $2,500? Are you serious? He replied almost instantly. We're throwing him a proper celebration. He deserves it. You're his sister. That was it. Like that alone justified asking for that much money, like I owed it to them somehow. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't even sure if I was angry yet. More than anything I felt hollow. Like I was invisible again. Like I'd been called into a family meeting I wasn't even really a part of, but still expected to pay the bill. I looked at my bank account. I had just under $3,100 in checking. That was supposed to cover rent, Jaden's preschool, groceries, gas, and hopefully set a bit aside for that dental course I wanted to take next month. $2,500 would practically wipe me out. I'm a dental hygienist, not a brain surgeon. I get by, but there's no luxury here. Every dollar has a purpose. So I didn't respond. I put the phone face down and finished the dishes slowly. My hands were shaking a bit, more from frustration than anything else. The next morning I woke up to 2 missed calls and another message. This one longer. I don't understand what's taking so long. Sharon and I already put down a deposit for the venue. The caterer needs a final head count. We need the money by the end of the week. Dylan worked hard and deserves to be celebrated. You have a good job. It's time to step up. That line. It's time to step up. It felt like a slap in the face. I don't remember my dad stepping up when I needed help paying for daycare after Jaden's dad took off. I don't remember him offering anything when Mom got sick, or when I had to sell my car just to cover medical bills. But now, suddenly he had expectations. I called him. I couldn't keep texting. I needed to hear his voice, and maybe I needed him to hear mine. He answered on the second ring. Finally, he said, like I'd inconvenienced him by not replying right away. I can't give you that kind of money, Dad, I said, my voice steady but quiet. That's more than my rent. I've got Jaden to think about. There was silence on the line. Then he sighed. Amanda, this is what family does. We show up for each other. Dylan only graduates once. I didn't get a graduation party, I said, suddenly hearing myself out loud. You weren't even there. That was a different time. Things were complicated. No, I said. They were just different because it was me. He got defensive. Said I was being dramatic. That it wasn't about the past, that it was about celebrating Dylan, who had worked so hard, who was going to college, who was the first in his household to graduate with honors. And what about me? I asked. I worked 2 jobs to put myself through dental school. I raised a kid on my own. I never asked you for anything. He got quiet. Then he said, this isn't about you. Don't make it about you. I hung up. For the rest of the day I felt sick. I kept replaying that conversation in my head. I didn't want to be petty or jealous, but how could I not feel something? I thought about Jaden, about how one day he might wonder why his grandpa never came to any of his birthdays or school plays. 2 days later, Sharon messaged me. She sent a group text with some of their family friends. A big flyer for the graduation party. Venue, date, RSVP details. A note saying, generously supported by family. My name was tagged. That was the final straw. I sent one last message. Please remove my name from anything related to this party. I didn't contribute. I won't be attending. No one responded. Not even Sharon. Not even my dad. I haven't heard from them since. 3 days before that message from my dad, Jaden turned 5. It was a Saturday, warm but windy, the kind of spring day in Omaha that makes you check the weather 3 times before committing to outdoor plans. I had been planning his birthday for weeks. He had asked me months ago if he could have a dinosaur party, and I promised him we would make it happen. I worked extra shifts at the clinic, skipped takeout for almost a month, and used part of my tax return to pull everything together. I rented a bouncy castle with inflatable palm trees and cartoon T-Rex heads. I spent hours online finding the right cake, green frosting, volcano in the middle, and tiny plastic dinosaurs on top. The night before, I stayed up until almost 2 in the morning decorating the backyard. Streamers, balloons, those little footprint cutouts that made it look like a dinosaur had walked through our lawn. I even bought a folding table and covered it in a jungle print tablecloth with little name tags for each of the kids who were coming. But more than anything, I wanted it to feel like family. I wanted Jaden to feel like he was part of something. So I invited my dad, his wife Sharon, Dylan, and my sister Rachel. I even called a week in advance to remind them. Everyone said they'd try to come. No one promised, but no one said they couldn't. And when I asked my dad directly, he said, "We'll see how the weekend looks, but we should be able to swing by." The morning of the party, Jaden woke up earlier than usual. He was already at the window before I had finished making pancakes, looking out at the yard and gasping at the bouncy castle. He kept asking, "Do you think Grandpa's going to bring the big box like last time?" Referring to a gift my dad had sent for his 3rd birthday, a playset of trucks that arrived by mail because they hadn't come in person. I told him maybe. By 11, the neighborhood kids started arriving. My friend Mia came by with her twins. My coworker Carla stopped in for an hour with her niece. There were enough kids to fill the castle and keep the yard loud and chaotic in the best way possible. But every 10 minutes or so, Jaden would run back to the front window and look out at the street. He kept asking, "Is Aunt Rachel coming? What about Dylan?" I had told him they were invited. I'd said it casually, not trying to make promises, but in his mind, it meant they were coming. No one showed up. Not a single person from my family. Around 1 o'clock, I checked my phone. There were no missed calls. No voicemails. Just a single message from Rachel. Something came up. "Sorry, can't make it." That was it. No explanation. No emoji. Nothing that even sounded like a real apology. I tried calling my dad. It rang 3 times before going to voicemail. I didn't bother leaving a message. Jaden kept asking when Grandpa was going to get there. At one point, he stood by the door holding the little goodie bag he had prepared for Dylan. A small dinosaur figure and some stickers. He had picked it out himself at the store, so proud to have a gift ready for his uncle. I told him they might be running late. By 3, most of the other kids were gone. A few parents lingered to help clean up, but I told them I had it. Jaden was still bouncing, still hopeful. When I finally convinced him to come inside, I saw the way he looked back at the window one last time. He didn't cry. He didn't even say anything. But the silence in his eyes cut deeper than any tantrum ever could. That night, after he fell asleep on the couch with cake crumbs still on his shirt, I sat in the kitchen and stared at my phone. I scrolled through old pictures. One of Jaden at 2 grinning next to my dad at the zoo. One of Rachel holding him at the hospital the day he was born. They had been there once. At least a little. But somehow the more time passed, the less they showed up. I kept thinking maybe I had done something wrong. Maybe I had pushed too hard. Maybe I had isolated myself too much when Jaden's dad left. Or maybe I had been too distant after Mom passed. But none of that explained why they couldn't even bother to call. It wasn't just the absence. It was the silence. No one asked how the party went. No one followed up the next day. No one even texted to say happy birthday to my son. Not even a belated message. 3 days later, they were demanding money for Dylan's party. Not a word about Jaden's. Not even an acknowledgement that they had missed it. That's what broke me. Not the $2,500. Not even the unfairness of it all. It was that my son spent his birthday staring out a window waiting for people who never planned to come. People I had convinced him still cared. This wasn't the first time they had let Jaden down. It had become a pattern, really quiet, subtle at first, like background noise you convince yourself not to pay attention to until it starts drowning out everything else. Last year for his 4th birthday I had planned something small. Nothing extravagant. Just a gathering in our apartment with a few close friends, some homemade cupcakes and a little Lego set Jaden had been begging for. I kept it simple because I didn't want to be disappointed. I told myself to manage expectations. But even then, even with how low I'd set the bar, my parents didn't come. My mom said she had a migraine. She texted me a few hours before the party, telling me she wasn't feeling well and needed to rest. My dad claimed there was some urgent project at work, something that couldn't be rescheduled, even though it was a Saturday. No one called to say happy birthday. No one FaceTimed. Rachel didn't message at all. Dylan, not a word from him either. Not even one of those half-hearted sorry forgot texts days later. But 2 weeks after that I got a group message from my dad and Sharon. They said Dylan's car had broken down, and they needed $350 to help cover repairs. He uses it to get to school, they wrote. He can't afford to miss class. They made it sound urgent, like the whole world would fall apart if Dylan missed 2 days of community college. I stared at the message for a long time, remembering how Jaden had asked me the morning of his birthday, "Will Grandpa bring me balloons today?" And how I had told him, "I think so," even though I already knew they weren't coming. And yet I paid. I sent the $350, transferring it from my savings without a word. I justified it by telling myself I didn't want to be the kind of person who says no when someone else is struggling. Even if they hadn't shown up, even if they hadn't cared, I told myself that family is still family. I swallowed the bitterness, ignored the hurt, and clicked send. But the thing that really stays with me, what still stings even now, is the memory of Jaden's 3rd birthday. We had it at the park near Elmwood, the one with the big play structure shaped like a pirate ship. Jaden was obsessed with pirates that year, so I made cupcakes with little gold coin toppers and brought a plastic treasure chest full of toys for a little scavenger hunt. He wore a tiny red bandana and kept yelling, "R," at strangers. It was adorable. It was pure. My family actually showed up that day. For once they came. My dad, Sharon, Dylan, and Rachel all arrived together just as I was lighting the candles on the cupcakes. For a moment I let myself believe things were turning around. I even teared up a little when I saw them walking across the grass toward us. Jaden saw them and ran to them, arms open, shouting, "Grandpa," like he hadn't just spent the last 2 years being ignored. They stayed for 20 minutes. Exactly 20. Rachel said she wanted to go to the mall before the good sales ended. Sharon agreed, and apparently she had some coupons that were expiring that same day. My dad gave Jaden a small truck toy still in the Walmart bag, didn't even wrap it. Dylan didn't say much. Just sat at the edge of the blanket for a few minutes, looking bored, scrolling through his phone. Then just like that they were gone. I watched them walk away while Jaden opened the gift. He looked around, confused, like he didn't understand why they had left so soon. He asked if they were coming back after the mall. I said I wasn't sure. He waited for another hour, checking the parking lot every few minutes. They never came back. That was the day I stopped making excuses for them, at least in my head. But still I kept inviting them. I kept giving them chances. Not for me but for Jaden. Because I didn't want him to grow up wondering why his family wasn't there. I didn't want to be the only one trying. But now looking back I can't help but see how one-sided it's always been. They never tried. Not really. Not when it counted. They show up when it's convenient, when there's something to be gained, or when it looks good on paper. But when it's for Jaden, when it's for me, when there's no photo op or public praise, they vanish. And somehow every time I still hoped the next time would be different. A few days after I told them I wouldn't be sending the money, my dad messaged again. This time it was longer, more structured, like he had put real thought into how he wanted to phrase things. He started by saying that he and Sharon had decided to contribute $1,600 toward Dylan's graduation party. He framed it like a generous gesture, like he was going above and beyond. Then, in the next sentence, he said that Rachel and I would need to cover the rest, $2,500 each. He wrote it so casually, like we were all partners splitting a business expense. I remember reading the message while sitting in the parking lot outside Jaden's preschool. I had just dropped him off and he'd been talking about dinosaurs the whole ride. He wanted to be a dinosaur doctor when he grew up. His face had been sticky with breakfast syrup, and his hair still had a stubborn cowlick on the left side no matter how many times I had smoothed it down with my hand. He had kissed me twice before getting out of the car, once on the cheek and once on my hand, and ran toward the school gates without looking back. That message from my dad sat on the screen, cold and transactional, like a bill that was overdue. Not a word about Jaden. Not a single acknowledgement of the birthday they had all ignored. No follow-up about the last conversation we had. Just a breakdown of party costs and a dollar amount assigned to me, like that was my role in the family now. Payer, sponsor, financial backer. And Rachel? I hadn't even heard from her since her half-assed, "something came up," text. She hadn't even said anything about covering part of the party. But somehow it was just assumed. Just expected. We were women after all, his daughters. And for as long as I can remember, that has meant one thing to my father. That we owe him. That we owe the family. I sat there staring at the phone in disbelief. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was the principle of it. All this time I told myself they were just busy. That they had their own lives. That they didn't mean to hurt me or Jaden. But I saw it clearly now. They didn't see me as a sister or daughter or mother. They saw me as a resource. A reliable stream of money who didn't push back. Someone who would cover the shortfall, who would make things easier for everyone else. I had made it easy for them to disregard me. I had been quiet. I had always paid. I had always let it slide. Even when it hurt. Even when it humiliated me. When I helped Dylan with his car repairs, no one said thank you. When I hosted birthday parties alone, no one asked how they went. When I was struggling after Jaden's father left, I never got a call, a check, not even a card. But when Dylan needed tires or Rachel needed help with her moving deposit, I was the first number they called. And every time I told myself it was love. That love was about sacrifice. That one day they would see all the things I did for them and respect me for it. I told myself that if I just kept showing up, they would start showing up too. But that morning in my car I realized they never would. I opened my bank app. My balance was still hovering around $3,000 after rent. I looked at the payment options. I clicked on my dad's saved account. The same one I had used to send money for Dylan's car, for the vet bill when Sharon's dog got sick. For that time they said their heating bill was too high one January. I typed in the amount. $1. In the memo line I wrote, "Good luck." I pressed send. I didn't feel angry. I didn't cry. I felt clear. Clearer than I had in years. Like something inside me had snapped into alignment. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to justify why I wasn't going to carry their weight anymore. I just needed to stop. And for the first time in a long time I did. Looking back now, none of this feels new. It's like the whole picture finally came into focus and I could see all the pieces that had always been there. I just hadn't let myself connect them. I was never the favorite. I was never even really seen. I was just the one who made things easier for everyone else. I was the convenient child. Quiet, obedient, helpful. I learned early that if I didn't cause problems, if I took care of things on my own, I got praise. Not affection, not warmth, but that stiff, shallow kind of recognition that sounds like admiration but feels like distance. My parents used to say things like, "Amanda can handle it," or, "Amanda's so mature for her age." They said it with pride, but it always felt like a dismissal. Like they were handing off responsibility to me under the disguise of a compliment. By the time I was 10, I was packing lunches for Dylan and Rachel. Rachel's had to be cut diagonally, not straight, or she wouldn't eat it. Dylan liked his sandwiches without crust. If Mom was running late, I'd get them dressed for school. I knew where Rachel kept her hair ties, how Dylan liked his socks matched. I wasn't just their older sister. I was their unofficial second parent. There were nights when Dad would come home late from work, and instead of asking how my day was, he'd ask if I had helped with the dishwasher, if I'd gotten Dylan to do his reading homework. When Mom was too tired to cook, I made macaroni and cheese or heated up frozen dinners. No one asked me to. But no one stopped me either. I kept thinking that being dependable meant I would eventually earn something back. Respect, appreciation, a little bit of their time. But it never worked like that. The more I did, the more they expected. And when I finally needed something, it was always too much. When prom came around my senior year, I had my heart set on a soft blue dress I saw at the mall. It wasn't anything extravagant. Just this simple fitted gown with a satin sash and small beaded details. I tried it on once and felt, just for a second, like someone special. I asked my mom about it. She said we couldn't afford it. I didn't push. I told her I understood. I told myself I understood. 2 months later, Dylan got a brand new gaming console for his birthday. A PlayStation with 2 controllers, the newest version at the time. I remember standing in the kitchen watching him unwrap it while everyone clapped and made a big fuss. No one even noticed me. Not even when I quietly walked away. They said it was a gift because he'd been doing well in school. He was in middle school. Barely keeping up with CS. Meanwhile, I had straight A's. I tutored other students after class. I held down a part-time job at the library and I never missed a curfew. But all I got was a "we're proud of you" and a $25 gift card to Target. I wasn't jealous of Dylan, not in the usual sense. He was a kid and it wasn't his fault. But I remember thinking over and over, what did I do wrong? What else could I have done? The truth is, my parents didn't value effort unless it came with noise. Rachel cried and stomped when she didn't get what she wanted. Dylan pouted or refused to talk for days. I never did that. I swallowed the hurt and kept going. I thought that made me good. I didn't know it made me invisible. When Rachel got her first job, she posted a picture on Facebook of herself in the uniform. Mom shared it and wrote, "So proud of our hardworking girl." When I got my dental hygienist license after 2 years of night classes while raising Jaden alone, I got a thumbs up emoji in the family group chat. That was it. All my life I've been expected to manage, to give, to help. And every time I've asked for even a fraction of that back, time, attention, support, it's like I've overstepped. Like I've broken some unspoken rule that says my needs don't count. It took me years to realize that being responsible was never going to be enough to make them love me differently. They loved the role I played. The reliability. The silence. But not me, not Amanda the person. Just Amanda the function. Amanda the helper. Amanda the fixer. Amanda the wallet. And now when I look at Jaden, I see the same shadow threatening to fall over him. A little boy already learning to ask gently, already adjusting his expectations when people disappoint him. I can't let that happen. I won't let him grow up believing that love has to be earned through sacrifice, that being good means being forgotten. I was 23 when I gave birth to Jaden. I was alone in every possible way that night. The father, if I can even call him that, was gone before the pregnancy test had even dried. One text after I told him and then silence. He blocked my number, deleted his social media, vanished like smoke. We had been dating for less than a year and he always said he wasn't ready for anything serious. I didn't expect him to be thrilled, but I never expected him to disappear completely. Till he did. And from that moment on it was just me. I remember the labor vividly. Every hour of it. I had gone in early that morning with light contractions and was admitted by noon. I texted my mom when they confirmed I'd be staying overnight. She replied that she was in the middle of something with Rachel and would try to come later. By 5 p.m. the pain was getting worse and the nurse said I was progressing quickly. I called again. No answer. Just a text 15 minutes later. We already have plans, sweetie. You'll be okay. You're strong. That was it. My mother didn't come to the hospital. Not during labor, not after. She went shopping with Rachel that day. I found out later they had gone to some kind of pop-up market outside of Lincoln and had dinner at a cafe Rachel liked. I was in a hospital bed, shaking and crying and terrified with no one holding my hand, no one rubbing my back or whispering that I could do this. There was just a nurse named Jenna, kind and steady, who stayed with me when she realized I didn't have anyone else coming. She held my knee when I pushed, tied my hair back when I threw up, and took the first photo of me holding Jaden in that harsh, bright hospital light. The next morning I texted a picture to my mom. She replied with, "Congrats. He looks healthy," and nothing else. No call, no visit. I stayed in that hospital for 2 days and left with a newborn and a little folder of discharge papers and feeding charts. The only ride I had was a neighbor from my apartment complex, a quiet older woman named Linda who had once helped me jump my car. She brought a blanket for the baby and made sure the car seat was latched right. I brought Jaden home to a tiny one-bedroom I had just barely managed to keep through my pregnancy. The crib was secondhand. The changing table was a dresser with a pad on top. I used grocery store gift cards to stock up on diapers and formula. Everything I needed to learn, I learned on my own. Feeding schedules, bath routines, swaddling. Nobody showed me. No one came by to help. No one offered to hold him so I could shower or sleep for 20 minutes. There were no hot meals dropped off, no, "How are you holding up?" calls. I was 23 with a newborn and a family that seemed to think I'd made my bed and deserved to lie in it, alone. But when Jaden was about 6 weeks old, something changed. They came. Not to help, not to support, but with cameras and phones and fake enthusiasm. My dad, Sharon, Rachel, all of them showed up one Sunday out of nowhere. They brought a cake that said, "Welcome baby Jaden," like it was some kind of celebration and not a performance. Sharon insisted on taking dozens of photos. Rachel changed outfits halfway through and retook her shots. They didn't ask if I had slept or if I needed diapers, or if my back hurt from holding Jaden all day. My dad held him for less than 2 minutes, looked down at him and said, "He's got my nose," like that somehow made up for everything he hadn't done. They wanted pictures. That was all. Smiling, curated, filtered moments to post online. Rachel captioned hers "Auntie Duties" with a heart emoji, even though she hadn't changed a single diaper or spent more than 10 minutes actually holding him. My mom posted one of Jaden in his tiny lion onesie and wrote, "So lucky to be a grandma again," even though she hadn't been there when he came into the world and hadn't offered me a second of support since. After they left, I sat on the couch and cried with Jaden on my chest. Not because I missed them or wanted them to stay longer, but because I finally understood how shallow their presence was. They didn't come to be part of our lives. They came to be seen. To say they had a role without ever actually playing it. Since then, everything has been on me. Every bottle, every fever, every night I stayed up rocking him while listening to the wind scrape against the window. Every bill, every scraped knee, every new word he learned. And I did it all. Not perfectly but completely. Every day. Every hour. Not because I had to, but as I chose to. They only came when it was convenient. When there was something to take a photo of. When it could be shared. When it made them look good. But not when it mattered. Never when it mattered. For the past year and a half, I had been quietly working towards something no one in my family knew about. It started after yet another argument with my father. One of those exhausting, circular conversations that left me drained and full of questions I already knew the answers to. He had brought up the house again like he always did whenever I tried to push back or say no. He liked to remind me that when I bought it 3 years ago he had helped. Not financially, he hadn't contributed a single dollar, but he'd signed as a co-owner to help me qualify for the mortgage. I was only 26, had barely built credit, and with Jaden so young and my hours still inconsistent at the clinic, I needed a second name on the application. He offered, and at the time I thought it meant something. I thought maybe he believed in me. I thought it was the beginning of something healing between us. But of course nothing changed. Instead it became his leverage. His go-to reminder that he had done something big for me and now I owed him. It didn't matter that I had made every mortgage payment, paid the taxes, fixed the plumbing when it broke, and shoveled the damn driveway every winter while holding Jaden's mittened hand in my other one. In his mind he had a stake and therefore I was obligated. I was bound to him in a way I couldn't escape. So I started planning. At first it was just research. I spent nights reading about refinancing options, co-owner removals, legal rights. I joined forums, saved links, made lists. Then one day I stayed late at the clinic talking to a patient. A local real estate attorney named Greg who came in twice a year for cleanings. He was the first person I actually spoke to out loud about it. I didn't give too many details, but I told him I was thinking about removing a co-owner from my mortgage. He said, "It's possible. It just takes time and patience. And proof that you're ready." We started working on it a few weeks later. I didn't tell anyone. Not Jaden, not Mia, not even Carla at the clinic. Greg helped me step by step, checking my credit, preparing documents, reviewing the original mortgage agreement. We ran the numbers and I slowly started tightening my budget even more. I picked up extra shifts, delayed non-essential spending, and funneled every spare dollar into paying off enough of the principal to improve my chances. The process wasn't easy. There were inspections, appraisals, lender reviews, and so much paperwork I felt like I was drowning in it. Greg was calm and thorough, never pushing, never judging. He just kept telling me, "This is your way out. You're not stuck." About 8 months in, I hit a wall. My credit was decent but not great. The bank wanted more collateral, more guarantees. So I sold my car. The one thing I had left that was just mine. A 2014 Subaru I'd bought used but loved like it was new. I switched to public transportation and ride shares, and every time I dragged groceries onto the bus or rushed to pick up Jaden in the rain, I reminded myself this wasn't forever. This was for freedom. Then finally it happened. 2 weeks before Jaden's 5th birthday, I signed the new loan agreement. My name just mine on the deed. My father was officially removed. No more legal hold. No more power. No more threats. It was my house. Greg emailed me the final confirmation documents and I just stared at them for a long time. I had done it. Quietly, deliberately, and completely on my own. There was no applause, no one clapping me on the back, no champagne. Just silence and the soft hum of my laptop and the sound of Jaden snoring lightly from the next room. I waited for the right moment to say something. I didn't want it to come from anger or pettiness. I wanted to say it when it would make sense, when it would land exactly where it needed to. And then came the text. The $2,500 demand for Dylan's party. I had my moment. After I sent that symbolic $1 payment with "good luck" in the memo line, I waited. And later that day I followed it with another message. Short, clean, final. Also, since it will probably come up at some point, my house is mine now. Fully refinanced. You're no longer listed as a co-owner. Just wanted to clear that up so there are no assumptions moving forward. There was no response. Not for hours. Then finally, "You're making a big mistake," he wrote. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. For the first time in years I felt completely unbound. I had cut the last thread tying me to someone who only ever saw me as an asset, not as a person. Not as a daughter. Not as a mother trying to build something better for her child. And I did it without asking for permission. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Jaden was sitting on the living room floor with his coloring book, legs folded under him, tongue poking slightly out the side of his mouth in concentration. The smell of waffles was still in the air, and I had just poured myself a second cup of coffee when I heard the knock. Not a light one, but repetitive, demanding. I looked through the peephole and my stomach dropped. It was my father. He was standing there in his usual leather jacket holding something in his hand. Behind him, down the front steps, I could see my mother, arms crossed, not moving, watching the door like she wanted to be anywhere else. And to the side, Rachel and Dylan. I hadn't seen either of them in weeks. I didn't open the door. Not right away. I waited. He knocked again, harder this time, and then I saw it. He tried the key. The old key. The one he used to have from when the mortgage first went through and the lender required both our names on the paperwork. He had kept a spare. He never asked. He just took it. The lock didn't budge. He jiggled it, confused, tried again. Still nothing. I opened the door just a few inches, just enough to speak through the gap, and slid the chain across so he couldn't push in. He looked up, surprised, caught off guard by the chain. "We need to talk," he said, voice already tight with annoyance. He held up the key like it proved something. "Why doesn't this work?" I didn't move. I didn't look at Rachel or Dylan. I didn't acknowledge my mother, who was now staring at the bushes like she wasn't part of any of this. I looked him right in the eye. Because this is my house, I said. And you no longer have access to it. He blinked. For a second he looked stunned. Then his face changed, tightened. The way it always did when he didn't get the response he wanted. His mouth pulled into that familiar scowl, his jaw clenched and his voice dropped. Are you kidding me, Amanda? After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? I could feel Jaden behind me peeking around the corner. I didn't want him to hear it, but I didn't move. I held the door. You didn't do it for me, I said. You signed your name to help yourself feel in control. You used that key like it was leverage. Like you could walk in whenever you wanted. That's over. He stepped closer. You're being dramatic. We're family. We don't treat each other like strangers. I didn't say anything to that. I just looked at him. Rachel tried to step forward, her voice too light, too rehearsed. Mandy, come on. Don't make this into some big fight. Let's just talk like normal people. Like normal people? I turned slightly toward her. Were we normal people when no one showed up for Jaden's birthday? Or the one before that? Or the one before that? Dylan shifted uncomfortably but didn't speak. Typical. My dad slammed the side of his fist gently, deliberately, against the doorframe. Not hard enough to be violent but hard enough to send a message. You're making a huge mistake, Amanda. You think you can just shut us out? I leaned forward, close enough that he couldn't miss the calm in my voice. You shut yourselves out a long time ago. You just didn't notice. His face turned red, eyes narrowing. My mom finally looked up but still didn't say a word. She just stood there holding her purse like it was a shield. I didn't wait for more. I closed the door slowly. I didn't slam it. I didn't lock it dramatically. I just closed it. Quietly. Deliberately. I heard footsteps after a moment. Rachel muttering something about how I was overreacting. My father cursing low under his breath. Dylan saying nothing as always. My mother's heels on the front path. And then silence. Jaden came around the corner and looked up at me. Was that Grandpa? I knelt beside him, brushed the hair from his forehead. Yeah, I said. But he doesn't live here. Not anymore. It happened 2 days after I closed the door on them. I should have expected some kind of retaliation, but even I didn't think he'd go this far. It was around 7:40 in the evening. Jaden was already in his pajamas, brushing his teeth, singing that silly toothbrush song he made up about fighting the sugar bugs. I was on the couch with my laptop open, paying bills, sipping the last of my coffee from the morning when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach tighten. 2 uniformed officers were standing on my porch. I opened the door cautiously, stepped outside and closed it behind me, not wanting Jaden to see. The older of the two, tall, mid-40s, professional but not unkind, introduced himself. The younger officer kept quiet, standing just behind his partner with his hand resting lightly on his utility belt. The taller one cleared his throat and said, "Ma'am, we received a call regarding a possible situation involving a minor. A report was made by your father. He claimed his grandson is being withheld from family access and may be in an unsafe environment." I didn't flinch, but I could feel heat rising up the back of my neck. I took a slow breath and nodded. Of course. Would you like to come in? They stepped inside and I motioned toward the dining table. Jaden was humming to himself in the bathroom down the hall, water still running. I quietly called over, "Jay, finish up and hop into bed, sweetheart. I'll be there in just a bit." He called back with his usual, "Okay, mommy," completely unaware of what was unfolding. I turned to the officers. I'd like to be very clear. Nothing illegal or inappropriate is happening in this home. My son is safe. I'm his sole legal guardian. I have all the documents ready for you. I went to the hallway closet where I kept the binder. I had built it over the last year. Everything organized chronologically, color-coded tabs, clear sleeves. I pulled it out and placed it on the table. The officer raised his eyebrows slightly as I opened to the most recent documents. First, the new property deed, clearly listing me as the sole owner of the house. Then Jaden's birth certificate showing me as his mother with no father listed. Legal proof that I had full custody. Then I showed them the printed screenshots from my phone. My father's messages about the money, the veiled threats, the photo of him trying to unlock my door with the old key. Finally, I pulled out a photo from Jaden's most recent birthday party. Him standing under the T-Rex balloon arch, frosting smeared on his cheek, surrounded by neighborhood kids and the small cake I made with plastic dinosaur toppers. I laid it all out in silence, giving them time to read through everything without trying to oversell or over-explain. The lead officer looked through it slowly, his expression unreadable but focused. When he spoke again, his tone had changed slightly, less formal, more grounded. "Thank you, ma'am. You've been very thorough. And I appreciate how calm you've been about all this. He looked over at the other officer then back to me. To be clear, there's no legal basis for the claim he made. From everything you've shown us, and from what we're seeing in this home, there's no concern about your child's welfare. I nodded once but didn't speak. My throat was too tight for a second. Then he added, but I will say this. Your father's behavior, the attempt to enter the home, and this report, especially knowing it's false, suggest a pattern that could escalate. You may want to consider filing for a protective order. At the very least, consult with your attorney. I nodded again. I have one. His name's Greg. I'll call him tomorrow. He gave me a business card with his name and badge number. If anything else happens, don't hesitate to contact us directly. And make sure your child's school knows not to release him to anyone but you. They left soon after, politely but firmly. I locked the door behind them and stood there in the entryway for a moment, my hands still on the deadbolt. My legs felt heavy. My fingers were shaking just a little. When I walked down the hall to Jaden's room, he was already in bed, his stuffed stegosaurus curled under his arm. Was someone at the door? He asked sleepily. Just someone making sure we're okay, I said quietly, brushing his hair back from his forehead. And we are. We're more than okay. He smiled, already half asleep, and turned over. I sat beside his bed for a long time watching him breathe. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't scared. I was furious, yes. Worn out, definitely. But not scared. Because I was done being afraid of people who only came to take. And now finally the law was on my side too. 4 days after the police visit, I was just starting to think maybe it was over. Maybe they had realized I wasn't going to play along anymore. That they couldn't manipulate me into submission, couldn't guilt me back into that old role of silence and obedience. I had even slept through the night for the first time in weeks. But that illusion shattered around 10:15 a.m. on a Thursday. I had just gotten home from dropping Jaden off at preschool. I was unloading groceries when the knock came, measured, polite but unfamiliar. I looked through the side window and saw a woman standing there with a clipboard in one hand and a brown shoulder bag slung across her body. She was dressed in business casual clothes and had an official badge hanging around her neck. She introduced herself as Ms. Thomas. Child Protective Services. She said they had received an anonymous report regarding possible neglect in my home. For a second I actually laughed, not out of humor but because it was so transparent. I knew exactly who had made that call. No one else would go that far, no one else had the motive, and the timing lined up far too neatly to be coincidence. After I cut him out of the house and made it clear I wasn't going to fund his golden child's party, my father had called the police. That hadn't worked. So now this. I stepped aside and invited her in. My hands were shaking slightly but my voice was calm. I had nothing to hide. I'm happy to answer any questions, I told her. And I have documentation if you'd like to see it. She looked around the house as she walked in. The floors were clean. Dishes stacked neatly on the drying rack. Jaden's toys tucked into bins along the living room wall. His backpack hanging by the front door, his daily schedule written in marker on the whiteboard in the kitchen. I'll need to take a look at his room, she said gently. Of course, I said. Follow me. His room smelled faintly of kid shampoo and something vaguely lemony. His sheets had dinosaurs on them, blue and green, and his clothes were neatly folded in the drawers. The bookshelf was full. His art from school was pinned to a cork board above his little desk. I didn't rush her. I let her take it all in. She didn't smile, didn't scowl, just observed. And asked quiet questions. Does Jaden have regular meals? Yes, 3 times a day and snacks. I showed her the fridge, the pantry, the meal planner on the fridge door. She nodded. Does he attend school? I gave her his preschool enrollment documents and the attendance reports. Does he have regular medical care? I pulled out his pediatrician's records, the vaccination card, the emergency contact sheet with the clinic's number highlighted. Then she asked if there had been any recent family conflicts that might explain the call. I didn't name names but I didn't lie either. I recently removed a family member from the deed to my home, I said. It didn't go over well. He made threats. I filed documentation with my attorney and already had a police report on file regarding his attempt to enter my home without consent. I handed her a copy of the officer's card, along with the written summary of the incident and the screenshots of messages I had provided earlier. She took it all. Read it carefully. And then, just when I thought I had done everything I could, I remembered something else. I called Jade. She was at the house in less than 20 minutes. Jade had known me since Jaden was born. She was one of the only people who had shown up at the hospital with a bag of diapers and a Tupperware of pasta. She's the kind of friend who keeps extra band-aids in her purse and texts me before storms just to remind me to bring Jaden's boots inside. When she walked in and introduced herself to Ms. Thomas, it was like the whole energy shifted. Calm, steady, maternal but fierce in that way only Jade could be. She spoke clearly with no theatrics, explaining everything she'd witnessed over the past 5 years. How I'd raised Jaden alone, how I worked full-time but still made every parent-teacher conference. How I read bedtime stories instead of turning on the TV. How I always put Jaden first. Miss Thomas listened carefully, taking notes but saying little. And then, after about 45 minutes, she set down her pen. "I'll be honest with you," she said quietly. "I see a lot of difficult homes. This is not one of them." I exhaled for the first time in what felt like an hour. "The report we received didn't include much detail," she continued. "But from what I've seen here and the documentation you've provided, there's no cause for concern. I'll be closing the file with no further action. You're doing just fine." She left not long after. I walked her to the door, thanked her calmly, and waited until her car pulled out of the driveway. Only then did I lock the door, walk into the living room and sit down on the couch. Jade sat next to me and handed me a glass of water. "He really thought that would work," she said. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The silence between us said enough. That was the kind of man my father had become. Or maybe always had been. Someone who would rather see me investigated by the state than accept that he no longer had control over me. But the state had seen the truth. And now that door, like the one to my house, was closed. The courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant, the kind of scent that clings to government buildings no matter how many fresh coats of paint they put on the walls. I sat there on the bench outside courtroom 3B, my hands folded in my lap, breathing slowly. Not because I was nervous anymore, but because I knew what was at stake. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to let my voice be swallowed. Vanessa, my attorney, sat beside me, legs crossed neatly, binder on her lap, every tab and page marked. She had this quiet, unwavering confidence that made people listen without her ever raising her voice. She wasn't warm, but she was fierce. That's exactly why I hired her. I didn't need comfort anymore. I needed someone who would see what was happening and not flinch. The petition for the protective order had been filed 2 weeks earlier. After the police visit. After the CPS investigation. After every thinly veiled attempt to wear me down had failed. The messages. The fake concern. The gossip to neighbors. The anonymous reports. The door showing up with a useless key. I had documented everything. Screenshots, photos, voice recordings, written summaries, even the time-stamped call logs. And now it would all be heard. When they called us in, I walked into the courtroom with my spine straight and my jaw set. Jaden was with Jade at home, building a cardboard fort in the living room. I didn't want him anywhere near this. He deserved a normal day. My father was already seated on the other side of the room. He looked smaller than usual in the courtroom light. He wore a gray jacket and that fake calm expression he always used when he was trying to play the victim. Sharon sat behind him, arms folded tightly across her chest. Rachel and Dylan were on the far end of the bench, whispering between themselves. None of them looked at me when I walked in. None of them even acknowledged I was there. The judge was a woman, probably in her late 50s. She read through the papers silently for a moment, then nodded for us to begin. Vanessa rose without hesitation. She didn't embellish, didn't dramatize. She simply presented the facts. She showed the court the original messages from my father. First demanding the $2,500, then escalating with guilt and manipulation. She brought up the false police report he filed claiming Jaden was being held against the family's will. She presented the follow-up investigation by CPS, which had been officially closed as baseless and retaliatory. She outlined the financial pressure he had put on me for years, even as he dismissed me and my son in every way that counted. She read word for word the text he sent after I removed him from the deed. "You're making a big mistake." Then she showed the timeline, how that was followed by a failed attempt to enter my home, and then only days later a false call to CPS. His intention had been clear, she said. Not to protect his grandson, but to intimidate me into silence and compliance. When she was done, the room was completely still. Then it was his turn. He stood, cleared his throat, and tried to conjure that mask he'd always used so well. The concerned patriarch. The misunderstood man just trying to stay connected to his family. "I'm a grandfather," he said. "I just want what's best for my grandson. Amanda has pushed us all away. We were worried about her mental state. She's isolated, paranoid, controlling. I was trying to reach out." He even dabbed his eyes with a tissue, as if this was some kind of tragedy that had happened to him. But the judge didn't blink. She asked direct questions. About the key. About the CPS call. About the repeated demands for money. He stammered. Hesitated. Contradicted himself twice. When the judge asked him point-blank if he had ever attended Jaden's birthday parties, he answered, "Not every year, no," then quickly added, "But we always send our love." The judge looked back down at the documents. It didn't take long. She straightened her glasses, looked up and spoke in a calm, clear voice. Based on the evidence presented and the consistent pattern of behavior shown here, financial coercion, attempts to manipulate through legal and child welfare systems, and disregard for the petitioner's autonomy and parental rights, I am granting the full protective order. She paused, then added, Mr. Davis, you are to have no contact with Amanda Powell or her son in any form, direct or indirect, for a period of 4 years. This includes phone, text, email, social media, and third-party communication. Violation of this order will result in criminal penalties. The silence in the courtroom was heavy. My father's mouth was slightly open. Rachel looked stunned. Dylan stared at the floor. Sharon didn't move. I didn't look at any of them. Because in that moment it didn't matter. They were behind me. Legally, emotionally, entirely. When the judge stood, we did too. Vanessa touched my shoulder lightly and said, "It's done." And it was. I walked out of that courtroom not with triumph, not with joy, but with something deeper: stillness. Peace. For the first time in my adult life I had drawn a line. And the law had drawn it with me. After the court order was issued, I blocked every number tied to them. My father's, Sharon's, Rachel's, even Dylan's. Though I doubted he'd ever make the effort himself. I deleted old messages, archived photos, erased contacts that had lingered on my phone like ghosts. I changed my privacy settings, removed tags from old posts, locked down my location services. For the first time in my life I put up real walls. Not just emotional ones. Legal, digital, physical. And I didn't feel guilt. I felt breath in my lungs that didn't carry weight. It didn't take long for them to try anyway. Rachel showed up outside my workplace one afternoon about 3 weeks later. I saw her through the front glass windows of the clinic, standing near the bench by the parking lot, phone in hand, pretending to scroll but glancing up every few seconds. I didn't go outside. I called Jade, who was working reception that day, and she called the building's security. They warned Rachel once. Told her if she returned it would be documented. She hasn't come back since. My father, of course, was less subtle. He tried twice to contact me through other people. Once he called Jade's cousin, whom he'd met exactly one time at Jaden's 3rd birthday and apparently still had in his phone. The man had no idea what was going on and forwarded the voicemail to Jade, confused. The second time he tried to send a message through one of the administrators at Jaden's preschool, claiming he was just checking in as a grandfather and wanted to make sure Amanda was okay. I had already notified the school about the order. They reported it immediately. When officers showed up to speak with him, he became defensive, raised his voice and refused to comply. They held him overnight for violating the protective order through indirect contact. It wasn't a long stay, but it was enough to leave a record. Enough to make it clear that the law wasn't on his side anymore. And then things went quiet. The silence felt strange at first. It wasn't peace, not right away. It was like walking out of a storm into a still room, your ears still ringing, your body still braced for impact. But day by day I stopped checking the windows. I stopped scanning every unknown number that called. I stopped wondering what the next escalation would be. Jaden's 6th birthday came in May. We planned it together. No guessing. No waiting on people who wouldn't show. He picked the theme himself, space, and we transformed the living room with glow-in-the-dark stars and black streamers and paper planets hanging from string. Jade helped me hang everything while Jaden colored little astronaut cutouts. Carla, my coworker, came with her nephew. 2 of Jaden's school friends arrived with their parents, all carrying hand-drawn cards and dollar store gifts that Jaden treasured like gold. Even Ms. Lena, his preschool teacher, showed up. She brought a telescope, the kind meant for kids but real enough to point at the moon. Jaden didn't ask about Grandpa. He didn't stand by the window. He didn't ask if Aunt Rachel was coming. He was too busy showing everyone how Saturn has rings made of ice and rock. At one point he ran across the room and hugged me so hard I nearly dropped the tray of cupcakes. "This is the best birthday ever," he said. I believed him. There were no forced smiles, no photos staged for people who wouldn't stay. No pretending. Just people who showed up because they wanted to. People who didn't need to be asked twice. People who didn't make me feel like love had to be earned in installments. That night, after everyone left and Jaden was asleep in bed, still clutching his toy rocket, I sat on the couch with Jade. We didn't say much. Just sipped wine and listened to the soft hum of the air conditioner. And that's when it really landed. My family, the one I was born into, had always treated love like a transaction. A currency traded for silence, compliance, or obligation. I was either useful or I was invisible. But that wasn't the only way to live. It wasn't the only way to be a mother, a daughter, a woman in the world. Because real family doesn't need leverage. Real family doesn't withhold affection or use institutions to control you, or ignore your child for years only to demand thousands of dollars when it benefits them. Real family shows up. Real family remembers your child's birthday without being reminded. They help you hang paper planets because they know how important it is to get the rings on Saturn just right. They sit on the floor with your son and let him talk about space until bedtime without once checking their phone. Real family loves you, not because you've paid enough or said the right thing or made the right sacrifice. They love you because they choose to. And that, finally, is the life I have now.